What is up, YouTube? We are in Granbury. There's the Nut House. Super haunted. We're here for the Ghost and Legends tour. Here we go.
Welcome, my name is Brandy. I'll be your tour guide this evening. You may know that Granbury's motto is where Texas history lives. We like to say it's where Texas history never left. Now a couple little disclaimers before we get started. Just a reminder, this is a walking tour. It's about an hour long. I'll take you around the square with a little detour off, not overly strenuous. And if you feel like you may not be up to it, please let me know now and I'll gladly refund your money. We don't want anyone experiencing any physical discomfort this evening. A little mental discomfort perhaps, but not any physical. Also, of course, we can't guarantee that you'll see or experience anything ghostly. They don't necessarily come when we call them. But you do have my word, we don't have anything rigged. Nothing's going to jump out at you and yell boo or anything other kind of tour. So if you do happen to see something, if it's not a trick of the imagination, then it just might be real. We've had some weird things happen on the tours before. They especially like messing with technology. Cell phones and camera batteries can get drained or make it really hard to take a picture somehow. Had it on 3 separate occasions so far that a person's cell phone will randomly start playing music when they're not even touching it. The third time it happened twice on the same tour to the same person, but it was a different song each time. So it actually had to change selections in the middle there. First was Shania Twain, second was Whitesnake. It's a pretty good variety, you know? Ghosts have some good taste here to party. So you never know what can happen. Of course, photography is highly encouraged if you're able to. If you have anything fun showing up in your pictures, let me know. We'll post it on Facebook. We love that sort of thing. You never know who's going to photobomb you, I do. We'll get started with a brief history of Granbury itself. Granbury was incorporated to town in 1871. The decision to make Granbury the county seat of Hood County was made by a small majority of the county's voters to be a 40-acre land donation made by J.F. and J. Nutt and Thomas Lambert. We'll learn about the Nutt family in just one moment. Granbury was named after General Hiram Bronson Granbury. He was Brigadier General of the Confederate Army under command of General John Bell Hood, which gave Hood County its name. Granbury and General Pat Cleburne were killed at the Battle of Franklin in 1864. He was buried there in Tennessee till 1893 when his body was brought here to the city cemetery. At that time, the procession carried his body up Crockett Street right here on its way up to his new home. Now, in the early days of Granbury, the town wasn't necessarily the nice family-friendly town that we have today. At one point, there were at least 7 saloons just along the square. We were a party town. That ended after 1905 when Carrie Nation came to town. She was a prominent figure in the Prohibition and Temperance movement, working to ban the use of alcohol. She left her famous acts at home this time, but she gathered the women of the town together into the Christian Women's Temperance League. They worked together to clean up the town and eventually shut down the saloons. Now, there's several historical figures associated with Granbury, some of whom we may even meet tonight. But there's some, well, not really directly related to the square. I'd be remiss in talking about Granbury without mentioning them. In the 1850s, the area was home to the family of Alamo hero David Crockett. His widow Elizabeth and their family settled in this area. Elizabeth is now buried in the nearby Acton Cemetery, where her gravesite marks the smallest state park in Texas. Just her grave, not the cemetery, is the state park. It's even got a little fence around it and everything. Wouldn't recommend camping there though, it's kind of cramped, not very good fishing. Now, their grandson Ashley Crockett gained some local fame in the 1870s by becoming one of the first newspaper publishers in the area. In fact, the Hood County News that we have today is a direct descendant of the paper that Ashley Crockett ran. The Crockett family were such major players in developing the town that, again, Crockett Street is named here in their honor. And something interesting to note about our clock tower, that is a set Thomas hand wound mechanism. There are only 2 set Thomas hand wound clock towers still operating in the world. Can anyone guess what the second one might be? And no, it's not Back to the Future. I get that a lot.
Big Ben.
Big Ben, very good. Yes. You have a direct link. Do you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry. He's like, I said big Ben. Sorry. No, you're good. We have a direct link with the this is getting me down. So I'll give you these tours for myself. So we have a direct connection with one of the most famous clock towers in the world. In fact, during the Millennium Celebration, CNN had a correspondent in each time zone so we could ring in the new year over and over again. For Central Time, they were here in Granbury. They had a correspondent at Big Ben. They wanted someone at the sister clock as well. Now we're already at our first destination of the evening. This here is the J.F. and J. Nutt building. It was built in 1893 for 2 blind brothers, Jesse and Jacob Nutt. They established a mercantile business in this area in 1866 in a log cabin building with a wagon yard in the back, hence the wagon yard that's back there now. Like I mentioned earlier, it was their land donation that made the town possible. Like I said, this building was built in 1893 by a local contractor, Jim Warren. It housed 3 generations of the Nutt family, with the Nutt Hotel living in here around 1910. The plaque says 1919, but further research now points to being closer to 1910. In the 1960s, Mary Lou Watkins, a direct descendant of the Nutt family, opened a restaurant right here. That's her ringing her bell across the street over there. That was part of the restaurant's gimmick. Y'all wore a period garb. When she finished cooking at the end of the day, she came outside, ringing her bell, letting everyone know that supper was on the table. She was a major part of the revitalization campaign of the downtown square in the 1960s. I really can't overstate her accomplishment. She pretty much single-handedly refurbished the square. She's the reason we have so many historical markers. She's the reason why the square itself is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. She's basically the reason why Granbury is what it is today. Mary Lou closed the restaurant in 1998, passed away in 2001, but she never really left. My mother and I used to work here as servers at another restaurant before it closed down a few years ago. We encountered Mary Lou almost on a daily basis. She's actually our inspiration for starting the tours. I like to say even after her death, she's still helping Granbury business prosper. Counter doors open by themselves and just shut them back. Okay, Mary Lou, we get it, we know you're here. Back door, we heard slamming footsteps on the floor, faucets turning on and off. A few times my mother even saw a lady in a long dress and a bun walking upstairs and on the upstairs landing. When I meet my mother's in the back dining room doing some training with another employee. She's the only female in the building at the time. All of a sudden, they both hear women's laughter coming from the front. They think, uh-oh, someone's up front waiting to be seated, waiting for the door open. They go rushing up front to greet the party, but there's no one up there waiting for a table. My mother and I opening up one morning, getting ready for a party upstairs, realized we needed a second tablecloth. I go down to the linen closet to get it. She says, oh, I left it unlocked. Go leave her with the key. Get down there, turn the knob, it's locked. So we get the key, I unlock it, get the cloth, lock it back, testing the knob to make sure it's secure. A little later, I ask her, would you mind getting me some napkins out of the closet? I locked it back, you need to take the key. She goes back and says, you sure you locked it? Because it was unlocked when I got there. So I really like to have a lot of fun with us over here. Now, the Nutt Hotel room 4 seems to get a lot of activity. Named the Mary Lou Watkins Suite, by the way. They've had activity elsewhere, but room 4 seems to be the hub. They had a couple ladies staying there one evening, around 4:30 in the morning. One of them gets woken up, someone very firmly shaking her shoulders. Bless you. Her friend is still asleep next to her, so it's obviously not her. She wakes her friend up, they're laying there trying to figure out what's going on. But all of a sudden, the room gets ice cold, and they hear knocking all over the walls. They think, okay, something's definitely wanting us to stay up tonight, because we're not going back to sleep anytime soon. We're doing these tours. One evening, lady comes out and says, oh, I know this place is haunted. I was just in my hotel room. Someone knocked on the window. Well, of course, all the rooms were on the 2nd story. So who's knocking on those windows? Paul Bunyan? That's a different legend. Think about the morning joke. Now, back there's a couple staying there in room 4 along with their little 3-year-old daughter. All of a sudden, little girl just starts talking away. This is who you're talking to. Little girl says, that woman. Even more recently, I had a couple ladies come on our tour, and they were staying near room 4, specifically wanting to try to make contact. They had the room keys tossed on the dresser. Is everyone thoroughly impressed? They had the room keys tossed on the dresser. They're sitting on the bed chatting. And so Mary Lou, we love this room. It's beautiful. Hey, if you're here, can you give us some sort of a sign? As soon as they say this, the room keys start getting dragged across the top of the dresser. So it's a pretty good immediate sign for them right there. So to think that Mary Lou is still here, taking care of her guests, always the hostess. So hopefully she'll get to be taking care of her guests again very soon. I don't know if you heard the news, but a few weeks ago this actually caught fire. So that's why it's all boarded up, and there's the nice little evidence tag right there. So I'm interested to see what they turn up with that one. So they've been doing renovations for a couple of years, and this is in the middle of the night, so luckily no one was in here, so no one was injured. They contained it to the 2nd story. There was a lot of smoke and water damage during the day. If you come up, you can look inside the windows and you can actually see the sky. But I've heard that they have deemed it to still be structurally sound. So they hopefully, whenever I guess they're done with their investigating, hopefully they'll be able to rebuild her and get her back up and running, and Mary Lou will be able to start taking care of her guests again very soon. Now we're going to be heading on to what many consider to be our previous destination on the tour. But now this here is the Aston House. It was built in 1905 for Andy Aston and his wife Dorothy Dolly Ficklin. Andy Aston was co-owner of the Aston Landers Saloon, which is now the Arts and Letters bookstore on the other side of where we started our tour. This house was built because Dolly's parents were not too happy with the thought of how their daughter's fiance earned his living being a saloon owner. So he told him, okay, I promise to build your daughter the prettiest house in Granbury if you promise to stop bothering me about the way I make an income. So even back in 1905, people are just trying to deal with their in-laws. Apparently Dolly still lives here. People that have lived here before said they'd be laying in bed at night. They'll hear the pots and pans moving around the kitchen, the trash can rolling around outside. Children that have lived here said they've actually seen a lady checking in on them at night as they lay in bed. So Dolly's still a mother, cooking and cleaning and tending to the children. Another possible ghostly resident was a tenant of a Mrs. Riley who had bought the house and rented out rooms. Children have seen a gentleman in a dark suit from time to time. One time a little girl who used to live here went up to her mother and said, I can't tell if he's happy or sad. What is she talking about? She says, it's a man that's sitting on my toy chest. Well, apparently this little girl loved singing to her guests. She'd often be heard just singing away in her room to whoever was listening. One evening her father's walking down the hall and he hears her singing. He thinks, wow, you know, my daughter just has the most beautiful singing voice. But then it hits him, wait a minute, I'm the only one in the house right now. So not too sure who that was singing, but I guess someone got entertained that evening. One evening, another former resident is inside the house by herself. Her husband's at work. She becomes very frightened with the feeling she's getting in there. A friend of hers had understood the odd circumstances of the house and had advised her, if you ever become scared inside the house, simply say out loud, if you mean us harm, I command you to leave. If you mean us no harm, you may stay. So she says this, and immediately after, a knocking starts at the back of the house, moving slowly forward towards her. Of course, this really scares her. She calls her husband at work. Her husband hears the knocking over the phone and rushes right home to be with her. So sitting there listening as the knocking moves slowly from the back to the front. When all of a sudden, as soon as the knocking reaches the front door, it disappears altogether. All right, we're going to actually backtrack a little bit because this way we can
There's like...
So the premise is that Edgar Allan Poe's last few days he's in an insane asylum and he's being haunted by all of it, by his past the creation. So since they're kind of taking up the area, I figured to stop over here across the street from them. But this here is the Langdon Center. It's used for cultural exhibits, art exhibits, music lessons, Edgar Allan Poe. It's also known as the A.P. Gordon House. In the early days of Granbury, this is home to A.P. Gordon and his family. Mr. Gordon owned the saloon and mercantile store that's now the Square Cafe, which we'll learn about in one moment. Mr. Gordon plays another role in these stories later on. People believe that Mr. Gordon and his 5-year-old granddaughter named Audrey still live here inside the house. People have seen a gentleman from time to time in a long-sleeved white blouse and black slacks. They get the feeling of someone standing right behind them. They'll turn to look, catch him out of the corner of their eye. By the time they'll be all the way turned around, he'll be gone. They also say sometimes he'll be upstairs in the office. They'll hear the front door open and close and footsteps on the stairs. So it's like they're waiting to see who's coming up to visit them. But the footsteps don't get past the second or third stair, and they don't hear them walking back out. They have no idea who's coming up to visit. It's a very creaky door and very creaky stairs, so you would definitely hear it if they walked back out. Now, Audrey loves to play with the children and teenagers that come in. Luckily, we have someone on the tour tonight. Maybe she'll come play with us. You want to sing? She can cross the street, I don't know. But, they had a group of 12 to 15-year-olds taking music lessons once a week. She loved playing with them every chance she got. They would often hear a little girl laughing from the other room. Sometimes she would play with the locks on the doors, locking them in or out. Not in a scary, you're trapped way, but I'm playing a joke on you. You know, little girl, she wants attention. She'd always laugh and say, you'll never guess what Audrey did to us this week. We came here with RIP to do a couple investigations. Got some really great findings. That's why this is one of my favorite places. The group said this is one of the most active locations we've ever investigated. We came in here taking EVP recordings, or electronic voice phenomena. If you're not familiar with ghost hunting techniques, EVP is one of the most common ways of searching for a ghost. A lot of times if a ghost is talking to you, you can't hear what they're saying with your naked ear. So you bring in a recording device, record the air, ask questions, say comment, try to revoke a response. Then you play it back, preferably with a program, let you clean it up and hear really well. So you tell, okay, that was my conversation, but that wasn't there before. We came in doing what we call sweeps. A sweep is when we actually send a group of 2, 3, 4 people in to try to get the results, while the rest stay back, take a break, watch the monitors, whatever. You don't want an entire group of 20-something ghost hunters going into the building at the same time, stomping around, talking, making noise. It'll mess up your findings. You keep the group small and cycle them throughout the night. Speaker says Audrey likes the music lessons, and she has been known to play the piano herself from time to time. They'll be upstairs, no one's downstairs, yet the piano will start playing somehow. We figured she would enjoy some music. So we brought a guitar. Myself, a boy named Brandon, and a boy named Tyler went in to do our first ever music sweep. Brandon is sitting there playing the guitar, while Tyler and I are singing and goofing around, trying to have fun and draw her out. At one point, Brandon stops playing the guitar to hand Tyler a flashlight. At this point, on the recording, we got a little girl saying, "Don't stop playing, Brandon." Later on, my mother and Greg and James, the 2 co-founders of the group, are inside doing a sweep. They all 3 very clearly heard a little girl laughing from the other room. And then Greg asked, "Hey, Audrey, do you like it when they play the piano in here?" On the recording, we got, "Yeah." We brought a little boy with us named Zachary, a little 10-year-old junior investigator, loves these things. Figure bring a child with us, maybe that'll help draw her out. So Greg's telling him, "Okay, Zachary, really keep quiet and listen hard. See if Audrey's trying to say something to you." At this point on the recording, we got, "I don't like boys." We got cooties, right? Yeah. Apparently she didn't mind them too much, though, because later on, Zachary's sitting at the piano trying to learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, really getting frustrated he can't get it right. Finally, he manages to plunk out just the right tune. As soon as he does, very clearly on the recording, we got, "Yay!" So she may not like boys, really she's still a good sport. Cheer. On the second investigation we did, among the many pieces of evidence we got, my personal favorite one is my mother asked, "Do you like it when the ghost tours come by? Do you like playing with the people on the tours?" And again we got, "Yeah." So it's nice of a fan. I like it when they like us back, helps us out. Speaking of, something did happen to us on a tour here a while back. Lady calls back the next day all excited. I got something. As I was walking away from the building, she hangs back to snap some pictures. Just a cell phone camera, so it's no fancy ghost hunting technology. She decides to rejoin the group, so she calls out by Audrey and then snaps one last picture. Got the good stuff.
Picture.
I delivered.
It looks so cool, doesn't it?
Now we'll head on back up to the Square Cafe, formerly known as the Nutshell Eatery and Bakery. In the early days of Granbury, this, along with St. Helens next door, was one large saloon and mercantile store on its right, A.P. Gordon, whose house we were just at. There's actually 2 resident spirits in here, one of which we can even see on the wall right here. She's in this mural, standing next to the piano, wearing a long red dress. In the early days of Granbury, when the bottom part was a saloon, the upstairs area was rumored to be a gentleman's area where we could find company for the evening. People believe this lady in red was the proprietor of that establishment. Children have seen her quite often. One time a lady and her young son came in. The lady goes up to the counter to order. Son hangs back, pointing at the staircase, saying, "Why is no one helping her?" He said, "Who are you talking about?" He says, "That lady in the red dress." One morning, an employee came in to open up, feels a rush of cold air go by her. Wouldn't mind that right now, because you need one, right? She then turns to face the grill, getting that started, when all of a sudden silverware goes flying behind her head. Later on, she's closing out the credit card machines. She actually sees a white apparition go by, feels a rush of cold air again. Now the lady in red must like to look out the windows out front upstairs here. The employee's closing up one day, closes and locks the shutters, comes downstairs, looks up, shutters are open again. She has to go back and relock them. Of course, now it's a private residence up there. I can't vouch they should be open or not. Now this is actually the second mural that's been in here. They did some renovations recently. There was another mural on the wall for many years, and the lady in red was depicted in that mural as well. One evening, the original muralist decided to call it a night, so she goes to put her paintbrushes away, since she can't find her paintbrushes anywhere. She's searching all over because why would someone steal 25 used paintbrushes? She finally gives up, goes home, comes back the next day. They're later discovered sticking upside down, buried bristles first in the dirt of the ficus tree plant out front, so only about a quarter of each handle showing. So I don't know if this is commentary on how she's being depicted in the mural. I know she's definitely very moody, likes things the way she likes them. Real pitchy hissy fit if she doesn't get her way. So that's just like the flying silverware thing. So I'm sure she's trying to tell us something there. Now there's one more very famous ghostly resident living in here, but he's more well known just a couple doors down. If you're familiar with Granbury ghost stories, you've heard of this one. It's featured on Ghost Lab on the Discovery Channel, as well as any other number of TV shows and publications. Legend has it that John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of President Lincoln, was not killed in 1865 as another man instead. He escaped, moved here under the name of John St. Helen, where he tended bar. Of course, there's up for debate as to whether this man actually was John Wilkes Booth, so please don't put this on a history paper and then blame me for getting it wrong. E. Gordon's brother, F.J. Gordon, alongside a Memphis attorney named Finis L. Bates, who happens to be the grandfather of actress Kathy Bates, by the way. How's that for a random connection for you right there? 6 degrees of Granbury over here. We'll find Kevin Bacon one of these days. That joke killed when they were doing Footloose here, by the way. So he confessed to both of them that he was John Wilkes Booth. He even went so far as to tell F.J. Gordon where he had hidden the murder weapon. Gordon followed his instructions, easily recovered the weapon, still reportedly to this day in the hands of the Gordon family in a safe in San Antonio. St. Helen recovered from his illness, realized what he'd done, pulled the cat out of the bag, and quickly fled the town. Years later, in a town named Enid, Oklahoma, a man named David George committed suicide after having confessed to people that he was John Wilkes Booth. The body of David George was then mummified and put on a traveling freak show circuit to about the 1970s, and then he mysteriously disappeared. To this day, we have no idea what has happened to that mummy. You can see pictures of it online, though. If you Google image search John Wilkes Booth, David George mummy, that sort of thing. It's kind of neat to see if you're morbid like I am. It's kind of gruesome, it's mummy. So, of course, a lot of activity's been experienced in here, so Ghost Lab came in to investigate, taking their EVP recordings, really badgering and berating them. We know who you are, you coward. Tell us who you are. They play it back and get a very clear recording of a man saying, yes, I'm John Wilkes Booth. Now, I actually spoke with Drag Queen of Ghost Lab a while back, told me that audio you hear on the show is a little bit altered. The original audio they got was, yes, I'm John Wilkes Booth. You, something I can't repeat in front of polite company. Like it's family. So, of course, the Discovery Channel is more of a family-friendly network. I cut the last 2 words off, we get the gist of it. But I like that added flavor. It gives a whole new attitude to what he's saying there, right? We'll continue on. Now this here is one of the most popular stories on our tour. People believe that here at Market on the Square, here at Oz, what used to be Market on the Square, and down the Silver Saddle Saloon, people believe this whole area is haunted by a little faceless girl. The story is in the early 1900s, a circus came to town and accidentally left this little girl behind. She wound up wandering the streets along this way, and now she's still here. Another version of the story suggests she was watching the circus parade past from an upstairs window. When she fell from the window and again, she's still here. Either way, it's believed that a circus was involved in some way and things didn't wind up going so well. A while back, a store called Books in the Square used to be where Silver Saddle Saloon is now. At that time, they had a toy section in the back with a display tree full of hanging stuffed monkeys. You know, the kind that when you squeeze, it goes, ee, that's not a horrible tree. One evening, an employee is closing up. He's all alone in the store. The doors are locked.
He's up at the front register reconciling books. When all of a sudden, from the back of the store, he hears every single one of the monkeys on the monkey tree start screaming all at once. That also happened to be the last time he told his boss he would ever work by himself after dark. However, that is not why this is everyone's favorite story. Everyone's favorite story happened right over here where Oz is now. Back in the 1980s, they had a photo booth in there. One of the old-timey kind, you could dress up as a saloon girl or a cowboy. You come in one morning to open up, find the booth is a bit in disarray. The camera is on its lowest setting on the tripod, which no one would have ever set it at. Made the camera very unstable. It's an expensive camera, you didn't want to mess with it. The antique chair had been moved, and there was a blue dress draped across the chair. It's all very odd. Every person that had a key to the building is inside the building at the same time. But not a single one of them has any clue as to what could have happened the night before. So they're tidying up, getting ready to open, still puzzling over what's going on. When all of a sudden, one of them discovers a photograph in the wastebasket nearby.
No, I go to Alabama and I dress the same as I always dress. And I offended a lot of people with my costume. So, yeah.
Nice.
As you can see, this is the chair that had been moved. And this is the blue dress that was draped across the chair. However, the flowers and the bow were nowhere to be seen. They never had them in the store and didn't after that, so don't know if she brought them with her and took them back or what. And as you can see, you can make out pretty much every detail in this picture except for her face. She actually has been spotted by a couple people so far that I know of. We tend to describe her as having some sort of a white veil material covering her face, so you can't make out the details. Of course, the jury is still out as to why she has no face. Most common theory is if she was with the circus, maybe she had some sort of disfigurement. Or if she fell while watching the circus, maybe that's where she landed. Either way, it's all just theory. We really have no idea what actually happened to her. Maybe she's just shy. Of course, that's why this is everyone's favorite story, because how many times do you get a ghost leaving a picture of themselves behind for you to find? Makes my job easier. First ever ghost selfie that I know of. Or Soulfie, as I like to call it. I'm a sucker for a bad pun. Okay, one more for you. Don't pick a pillow fight with death unless you can handle the Reaper cushions. Okay, I'm sorry, I gave you money back. First off, I would like to apologize that it looks like this stop is not going to be as interesting as the one we had a couple weeks ago. See, this is a B&B upstairs, and apparently the person staying there didn't realize that windows are see-through. So there was a lady upstairs right in front of the window. Luckily, her back was turned, but yeah, so that was when people were standing right next to the ghost. But so sorry, it's not going to be quite as interesting. I would just stop here for you. Now this here is the B.M. Estes building. It was built in 1893 by Mr. Estes. He was a prominent figure in town, well-respected lawyer, county judge, and district attorney. People believe that Mr. Estes is still here as well. Before this was Farina's, it was two separate clothing stores. Dakota's cabin in the two-story section closest to us right here, and the clothes horse in the single-story section next door by the patio. An employee of the clothes horse was working up front one day, all alone in the store, when all of a sudden from the back sale section, she hears the very distinct sound of clothes being separated on the rack. She goes back to thinking maybe someone's come in that she didn't notice, and of course there's no one back there. However, the clothes were separated on the rack when she got there. Now, say sometimes they'll hear little children running around upstairs over there. However, that's the single-story section. There is no upstairs. No one should be running around them. Here at Willis Dakota's cabin, say items would fall off shelves. Suitcases would be heard rolling around on the floor. One time the owner told me she had a deck of Texas playing cards for sale up by the front counter. She comes in one morning to discover they are laying stacked perfectly on top of each other on the floor in the back of the store. None of her employees admitted to having doing this. So yes, Mr. Estes was entertaining some friends at evening. And something actually happened to my mother and myself in preparation for the tours here. The weekend before we started the tours, we came around the square going door to door, letting everyone know what we were doing. I walk in here to Dakota's cabin up to the front counter. I tell the lady, starting next weekend, every Friday and Saturday evening, we'll be doing ghost tours on the square. As soon as I say this, a cowboy boot on display on the sidewall flies off the wall and lands about 8 feet away from where it originally sat. No one in that corner to have pushed it or thrown it. So it could have fallen and landed that far away on its own. Lady laughs and says, There's our ghost right there. People out front, they're calling their booths in the back of the store. You had to come see this. Just talking about a ghost tour and a booth just flew off the wall. They were taking pictures of the booth. They were loving it. So I'd like to end with Mr. Estes voicing his approval of the tour, giving us a little added promotion. We'll take a read and get it right. Every little bit helps. Yeah. Has anyone been watching 1883, the prequel to Yellowstone? Well, if you do happen to watch it, if you see the first episode, you'll see it right inside here. That is inside that is inside the Callaway Hotel, the scene where Tim McGraw is sitting in the bar, and Sam Elliott comes in and pays for his lunch. They did most of the filming down at the stockyard for Worth for a couple of weeks, but they came out here for a day. It was a whole big to-do. The whole town came out trying to get a glimpse of Sam Elliott and Tim McGraw. I came out too, but it was about 150 degrees out that day. I didn't stay out too long. I just felt bad for those poor extras. But if you see the first episode of 1883, right inside here is inside the Callaway Hotel. Now just down this road about half a mile, a little too far to walk to tonight, is the city cemetery. There's some famous residents buried out there, including General Granbury, alongside a marker for his wife, who's actually not with him. She's in an unmarked grave in Alabama. Also the family of Ashley Crockett, minus Elizabeth, of course, who's out in Acton. There's one more very famous resident of the cemetery, if you believe the tale. History tells us a notorious bandit, Jesse James, was killed in 1882 by a member of his own gang and buried in Missouri. However, local legend tells us it was another member of his gang named Charlie Bigelow killed him instead. He escaped, moved here under the name of J. Frank Dalton, and worked for railroads in the 1880s. So this was the happening place to be if you got killed somewhere else. If you wanted to show up here later on. Legend also tells us he loved the town so much he moved back here with his grandson at 103 years old because he wished to die and buried in the town where he had met the woman with whom he'd fallen in love. Hood County Sheriff at the time, Orrin Baker, befriended this man. After the man's death, he wrote an article from the Hood County News detailing the post-mortem examination he presided over. He claims he personally witnessed the scars of 32 bullet wounds in this man's body and a rope burn scar around his neck. So if this wasn't Jesse James, it was definitely someone that had a pretty rough life otherwise. Sheriff Baker went so far as to put in writing in this article. He personally believed this was Jesse James, who died here in Granbury in 1951. Even his headstone here reads, supposedly killed in 1882. You never know what you'll see when you visit this grave. People only tell you sometimes. Sometimes you'll see bullets. Sometimes you'll see Jack Daniels. It usually doesn't last very long up there. What you will always see is lots of pennies and coins. Apparently this is common custom that friends of the deceased would place pennies on a person's headstone as a way of trying to help pave the way into heaven because the person was such a scoundrel by paying little extra help. So hopefully Jesse James got all the help he needed there. Jesse James is actually buried in 3 different locations. Here at Missouri and Canton, Texas for some reason. Everyone loves a bad boy, we all finally know. The other 2 locations, his headstones are paid for by the Tourism Department and the Chamber of Commerce. His headstone here is reportedly paid for by Jesse James's descendants. So even his own family believes we just might have the right one. This brings us to the end of our tour. I want to thank you all so much for joining me tonight. You can check us out online, granburytours.com. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/GranburyGhosts, plural. Everyone forgets the S, but we've got more than one. We keep updating all of our goings on, including information on my book called Haunted Granbury, released by Arcadia Publishing. Talks about the stories we talked about tonight, but a little more in-depth. Talk about my own personal ghost hunting experiences, interviewing eyewitnesses. So it's not just a rehash of the tour, but some of our recycled jokes, so sorry about that. I do have some with me tonight I'd like to purchase for $22, and I'll happily sign it for you. It's also available right here at Arts and Letters Bookstore, also Square Cafe, also Barnes & Noble in Fort Worth. You know, keep updated on my newest book called The Ghostly Tales of Granbury from the same publishing company, part of the new Spooky America lineup. It's an adaptation of Haunted Granbury for the middle grade reader, the age 90 publish. Some of those with me as well for $14. Also, of course, right here at Arts and Letters Bookstore, Square Cafe, or Barnes & Noble. And you keep updated on our very exciting event that is actually happening right now, this weekend, that happened today, and it's going to happen again tomorrow, Sunday, from 10 to 5, Spooky Spectacle 2023, right over there at the Lake Granbury Conference Center on Pearl Street. It's a whole kickoff to the Halloween season. We're going to have ghost hunters and horror and sci-fi and cosplay and fantasy, all that awesome nerdy stuff that we love. Think Comic-Con with ghost hunters. Our special celebrity guest is Ken Sagos. He's the star of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4, and he has the special distinction of being the first African American to survive a horror movie in return for its sequel. only to then immediately be killed off. Progress. And he's the coolest guy. You definitely want to come and meet him. It's just $5 per person per day at the door. And a portion of the proceeds goes to benefit Texas Rescue for their equine sanctuary. And yes, they will be bringing miniature donkeys and horses dressed in costumes. So you do not want to miss this awesome event. It is going on tomorrow from 10 to 5 at the Lake Granbury Conference Center right down there on Full Street. Now we have Little Freezing saying thank you for joining us on our tour this evening. Snow because they didn't see a ghost on our tour. Thank you all so much. You'll have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Very good.
I was looking at everything trying to find something.
Oh good, you never know.
Are they little ghosts?
That's what it is.
October, I'm not going to be doing them 6th and 7th.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm starting.
Have a great day.
We'll see you tomorrow probably. We're going to take the kids out.
That was it. Pretty cool. Didn't film it all, so I don't want to give it all away. But yeah.